It's 102 The Edge, and we are backstage here at How the Edge Stole Christmas with the band that everybody is so excited about seeing this year, the Smashing Pumpkins. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
It's radio, so if you nod, they can't see it. You gotta talk into the mic. We can wait. No, I'm only kidding. Billy's going to make my job as hard as humanly possible. You know, so I was thinking about this on the drive-in today when the very first Pumpkins thing that I remember coming out, when I was listening to Gish or Siva or whatever way back in the early 90s, you know, alternative music was the alternative. And now you see, you know, the temper trap being used in every commercial ever, and you see the Cure selling Kodak film, and you see, you know, Jettas and Bugs being hawked by alternative bands. Did you ever see that on the horizon when you first started out?
No, I didn't. But at the same time, I don't think anyone could have predicted that you would lose so much of the record-buying public to the point where you don't have that money coming from that source anymore. And so really, the record business really isn't about selling records anymore. It's about selling something else through licensing and or selling concert tickets. But the main part of the record business was always to sell records, which is now the least important part of the business. So it's kind of turned everything upside down. So it made people like me, included, look at those situations from a completely different perspective, one of which was, how do we get people to hear what we're doing, or how do we even remind people that we're still here? So it's a very difficult situation for all artists. But at the end of the day, survival is the optimal thing. Things like aesthetics go out the window when survival is threatened. And I think especially for a lot of those indie bands, I mean, that is their only source of income. So more power to them. If that's what it's going to take to make more music, then more power to them.
Well, and talking about survival, I mean, I remember, once again, going back to the very earliest days, you know, wasn't Gish on, like, Caroline or something like that? And, you know, then you guys switched labels, and now why don't we talk about the course of your survival over the years to where you are now and the way that you're releasing records now? I mean, it wasn't always totally smooth sailing in there to, you know, jumping to a much bigger record label, and then obviously there was a ton of promotion behind you and everything else. But tell everybody about the way that you're releasing the new stuff now, that people, you know, can go and download it and stuff now.
Right. Well, I made a choice to make this album, Tear Garden by Kaleidoscope, to be a completely free album. So all the songs from the album, or at least 44 of them, that's what I've committed to, will be available for free. So I think at this point we have 7 songs up for free. There's going to be 8th going up any minute. If you go to smashingpumpkins.com, you can take the song for free. You don't even have to give an email address, and you can send it to as many people as you want. And we encourage that because we want people to hear the music, because without that emotional connection to what we're doing musically in this particular moment in 2010 going into 2011, we can't actually sort of prove what we're trying to do, which is the band is alive and going forward. When people sort of try to compare where we're at to, say, the heyday of the 90s, you don't have that same support that you had, particularly from MTV. Right. So to sort of compare the eras is to sort of ask apples to be oranges, right, or pumpkins to be something else. So we're just trying to be very aggressive in our willingness to sacrifice maybe one aspect of the normal business to create a freedom and a good energy around the spirit of what we're doing. And slowly it's really gaining momentum because people really understand that Smashing Pumpkins is at its core an alternative band, not just in musical style, but also in symbolism. Right. We're one of the core, when you think of alternative music, Smashing Pumpkins is one of the core bands that you think of that sort of define not just the 90s, but sort of define the alternative mentality, for better and for worse. And I think it's important that we continue to define those parameters going forward into the next decade.
Okay, well, how for worse? I mean, everybody knows the for better. I mean, Smashing Pumpkins have some of the most iconic songs of the 90s and of the genre in general. I mean, up there, you can put Today up there with Just Like Heaven or How Soon Is Now or whatever of these very recognizable, iconic songs that mean so much to so many people. But you said for worse. How do you figure?
Well, you know, we weren't designed to be a hit-making machine. You know, we were designed to be an alternative band that played really loud music that was sort of emotionally connected to what we cared about. And the band is still very much that way. The particular tastes of Jeff, Nicole, Mike, and myself affect our decisions on a daily basis. I mean, we are reflecting an alternative sort of mindset. We're not just sort of trying to just market our music, because now that alternative music is popular, people forget that when Smashing Pumpkins started out, there was no arena to play. There was no radio station to play the music unless it was a college radio station. Those markets and those things that exist today were created by what had happened. So the worst was finding yourself in a situation where you're sort of out of your depth. You know, there I am at the Grammy Awards, and I'm competing against Celine Dion for Album of the Year. She wins Album of the Year, and she gets up on stage with 12 producers. Right. She's probably spent an equivalent of 2 to 3 weeks in the studio making her record, just cutting her vocal tracks and saying, yeah, I like it, Johnny, giving the thumbs up. Meanwhile, I just spent 10 months of my life, literally 12, 13 hours a day, pouring my heart out to make a record, but somehow that's better than that. We weren't prepared for the crass aspect of the business. And what I have to give credit for a lot of the newer generation bands is they're not caught up in the crap that we were caught up in. I mean, they're using computers, they're using whatever they can do to make their hits today. They're not getting caught up on these aesthetic things that we got caught up on. Basically, the business blew past us, but we weren't sophisticated enough to understand that that was a train that was leaving the station. Unless you got on it, right, see you later. And so when the imitators came in and the posers came in and I mean, at some point you just kind of had to shrug your shoulders and say, what are we even involved in anymore? It became a business with big capital letters, and to this day it remains a business. People can pretend all they want about integrity and all this stuff. It is a business. And we had a very brief shining moment where our anti-business was the business. But once it inverted and it went back to being the music business like it always had, well, then we had to learn how to song and dance just like everybody else.
Well, speaking of big business, one of the things that you brought up earlier that I always think is so interesting to talk to people about who have been around long enough to remember it is MTV. And MTV now, in between their marathons of Pimp My Ride and something about being teen and pregnant, they only show videos, obviously, very late at night. So how important is it to a band like the Pumpkins, who made extremely, once again, iconic and recognizable videos with throwing paint on, you know, ice cream trucks, or the Tonight Tonight video, or the Siva video, or whatever? How important are videos at all anymore? I mean, just to be shown on YouTube? Is that the only reason that people make videos?
I would say at this point they're not important at all, and probably for a reason that most people would scratch their heads about. It's very difficult to make a really great video unless you spend a lot of money. And there isn't the reason. You're not going to, if you spend $500,000 like we used to on a video, you're not going to get more than $500,000 in return.
Or if $500,000 in return.
And you see it now where people are very successfully making really cheap, cool videos that get a zillion YouTube hits. That's probably the best model right now. It's not worth spending the money, which of course encourages creativity. It's a little difficult in my case because you have those iconic videos. If we try to make sort of clever videos but on the cheap and the sly, it kind of comes off as a little bit lo-fi.
I can see that.
So in a way, I've kind of waited to really figure out what I'm going to do. I think video is. I think there will come a time where music will be tied to video and there will be no separation. I think it will become intrinsic in the music making process that there has to be some video attached to it, even if it's the video of a dying flower. And I think that time is slowly coming around, because I just don't think these kids are all growing up with a visual connection through the laptop, through their phone, and just the two-dimensional music aspect just not going to be enough.
Well, and I think something really interesting when I was talking about YouTube earlier is, I mean, if you go in and you have a song that you really like that there is no official video for it, you see that thousands of kids have already made their own videos of them and their boyfriend laying in bed taking pictures of each other, or, you know, them with pictures of their dog or whatever, to some album track from the Pumpkins. And I've always thought that very, very interesting, that it's kind of the kids have kind of taken the director's chair back these days.
I tried to simplify everything back down for this, which was like, can I get back to